Our breaking news coverage of the death of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham continues. And right now, we are going to talk with Dr. Chase Meyer with the Department of Political Science at the University of South Carolina to give more insight about what Senator Graham's death means for politics, not only here in South Carolina, but across the nation. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Meyer.
No, thank you very much for having me and to discuss this late-breaking development.
Now, my first question for you is this. Senator Graham's passing is a significant moment for South Carolina and the nation. From a political perspective, what does this moment mean?
Well, there's a couple of different ways we can look at it. In terms of the party politics aspects of it, this gives the Republican Party in the Senate one fewer Senate votes until a replacement is made and announced. Now, that means Republicans will still have the majority in the Senate, but they have lost a couple of votes due to some Republicans defecting and voting with Democrats occasionally. So until a replacement senator is appointed, that's going to make the margins even more narrow in the Senate. Now, once that replacement is put into place here, becomes another issue. How loyal will this new senator be to the Republican Party? Lindsey Graham has been loyal to Donald Trump and a big supporter, but certainly more supportive of issues, say, like the war in Ukraine than maybe other Republicans. So would Ukraine still have this advocate and voice in the Senate with this new senator as opposed to Lindsey Graham? Will Republicans have a loyal vote that they can count on? That's something we're not going to know until a replacement is named.
Yeah, a lot of questions still to be determined. Now, can you explain to us what happens next? So many people are wondering, how is a U.S. Senate vacancy filled for South Carolina?
Yes, in South Carolina, state law allows the governor to appoint a temporary replacement, so that way there will still be representation in the Senate. Now, in theory, the governor can appoint anyone they want, but certainly the governor being a Republican and Lindsey Graham being a former Republican, they'll likely appoint another Republican to this position. But that is just going to be temporary. We are still going to have an election this November to continue the term. Senate terms are 6 years long, and so this replacement would just be there for the last few months of the year until the term ends. And then whoever wins the November election will be the new senator. Now, that November election was originally scheduled to be between Democrat Annie Andrews and Republican Lindsey Graham, but now that's not going to be the case anymore, and we need to get a replacement Republican nominee.
So how quickly could South Carolinians expect to have someone appointed or elected to fill the seat?
Well, the appointment could be done very quickly. Governor McMaster could appoint someone within the next few days. However, there is precedent for with vacancies where some governors take a little bit more time to vet and figure out who they want to appoint. So we could probably expect an appointment within the next few days, but it could be as long as a few weeks. Only the governor truly knows. Now, in terms of the election of who's going to be the Republican nominee, work is already being done in the South Carolina legislature to schedule a primary election and then a possible runoff to replace Lindsey Graham. And so right now, the talk is that that will be in mid-August. Now, they're still moving pieces. That's moving very, very quickly to schedule a whole new statewide election that quickly. So we'll see what happens. But as of right now, the word is that there will be a new Republican primary for that Senate spot in mid-August.
Well, I also want to turn to this. Senator Graham, I mean, he served in the Senate for more than 2 decades. How would you describe his influence on Congress and national politics?
He was incredibly influential. A rule of thumb in Congress is the longer you're there, the more power and influence you have. So while there are some politicians who are in D.C. for just a few years and then they're gone, Lindsey Graham has been an institution. He was a senator for over 20 years. And before that, he was a longtime member of the House of Representatives. And so having that seniority in D.C. matters. It means that you have greater say on legislation. You also can get a bigger piece of the pie for projects and pork and spending from the federal government to come down to South Carolina. You get the first bite of that apple based on your seniority to get that. So South Carolina is losing a big voice and a big advocate for their state.
One of the things that I remember Senator Graham being known for the most is his ability to work across the aisles at time while also still maintaining that prominent Republican voice. How do you think history will remember his political legacy?
Well, that you touched on it perfectly with that. The ability to be both bipartisan and loyal to your party at the same time is a rare feat today. Many senators and politicians try to be able to do that delicate balancing act by being able to work with the other party while still remaining supportive of your party. And it's not easy to do. Your average Republican who is bipartisan and works with Democrats, Donald Trump will endorse their opponent, and the Republican Party overall will try to replace them. But yet that hasn't happened to Lindsey Graham. He was able to work with Democrats occasionally while still remaining the support of the National Party and Donald Trump. That's not an easy feat, and that's something that will be remembered, given that how rare of a talent that is. History will remember Lindsey Graham as someone who was a loyal Republican who was able to work with the other side and get stuff done, which is a rare feat nowadays.
And speaking of the rarity that was Senator Graham, given his long tenure, given his national profile, given the weight that he carried in politics, what challenges will the person who succeeds him face?
Well, there's going to face a number of challenges. Some of the most immediate ones is that Lindsey Graham was a big supporter of both Israel and Ukraine. He was relatively known as being a quote unquote a hawkish senator and someone who was very supportive of the United's place in international politics. And that's something that's not going to be easy to be replaced. Who in the Senate or in Congress is going to be the new voice for Ukraine and Israel? Obviously, there are some, but how many have his prestige, have his power, have his seniority? So that's something that's probably going to change here. So if you are someone who's supportive of Israel, if you're supportive of Ukraine, you might have reason to be nervous right now. Will Congress be just as supportive of you without Lindsey Graham pushing extra funding, pushing extra support? That's an open question right now.
And speaking of those relationships that he had, I mean, following the news of his death, we heard not only from President Trump, but also Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as Ukraine's president as well, speaking to the relationship and the power that he carried when it came to foreign policy. Now, I want to ask you this. Do you expect, or is there conversation that this vacancy could reshape South Carolina politics? Do we think there may be a really competitive race for this seat?
There is certainly a possibility. Whoever is going to be the Republican nominee for this fall is going to have a very compressed window to not only build a statewide campaign and infrastructure and staff, but also to raise money. It's expensive to run for the Senate. And so someone is going to have to raise a lot of money very quickly. Now, South Carolina is traditionally a Republican state. We are expected more often than not to vote for the Republican Party for president, for governor, for Senate, and that's how we've acted over the past few decades. But we are not so Republican a state that Democrats have zero hope. In the right environment and with the right candidates, Democrats can absolutely be competitive in South Carolina. And given that 2026 is shaping up to be a good Democratic year, and given that the current Democratic nominee for the Senate position, Dr. Annie Andrews, has raised a good bit of money, the ingredients are in place for a competitive race. So whoever this nominee is, they can't just cakewalk and think, oh, I'm going to be the Republican, and Republicans always win. I don't even need to try to compete. They're going to have to form a legitimate statewide operation and raise a lot of money very, very quickly.
And what happens to Senator Graham's committee assignments and leadership responsibilities in the meantime as we wait for that appointment?
Generally speaking, whoever gets appointed as his replacement will just take over his Senate committee positions. So the committees he serves on, they'll take over that. Same thing with the staff. Whoever comes in, they'll just inherit Lindsey Graham's staff, who he currently has working for him, and they will just continue the work he's been doing for the past few months. Now, whoever wins in November, though, has full power. They will likely be on different committees. Even if it's the same person, they'll get a different staff. So as of the next few months, whoever's in place will just more or less continue what Lindsey Graham has done. Come November after the election, though, it could be a free-for-all.
Now, what should South Carolinians be paying attention to in the coming days and weeks as this process unfolds?
Well, the first thing they need to find out is when is the primary election going to happen? Right now, as I said, there's discussions for it to happen in mid-August. However, we should also watch for any lawsuits. Why? Because federal law says that overseas military, by law, have to be able to get a primary ballot for an election in the mail because they might be serving overseas right now. As you know, obviously, there's many South Carolinians in the military stationed in the Middle East right now. They need to have a ballot with 45 days to be able to vote and return it. That might conflict with the plan for a mid-August primary. So it would not surprise me if maybe there's some lawsuits, there's going to be some developments that could delay things. We could have a Republican primary, while certainly planned right now for mid-August. Depending on what happens with lawsuits, that could be pushed back even further into September, which would then even compress shorter the time needed to compete for the general election.
And for viewers who may not follow politics closely, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from Senator Graham's passing?
The biggest takeaway from this is that with any politician, you never know what the future could hold. There's been a push in the Democratic Party specifically. After Joe Biden was pushed out and withdrew from being the Democratic nominee in 2024 due to his age and his debate performance, there's been a push in the Democratic Party to say, no more old politicians where we have to worry about their health, where we have to worry about their mental decline. We want younger politicians, a new generation. And so, at least in the Democratic Party, many older senior Democrats have faced primaries against younger challengers and have lost this year. Now, Lindsey Graham certainly was not as old as Joe Biden was, without question. But certainly, older politicians have greater health risks than younger ones. A senator in his 40s, while certainly they could have some health issues, is very unlikely to have the same health issues of someone in their 70s or 80s. So this is certainly going to be a takeaway from, hey, whoever replaces Lindsey Graham, do we want to risk this happening again of another health situation? Maybe someone in their 40s might be better placed to be the senator than someone in their 70s or 80s.
And I know a lot of people are going to be having that conversation as this continues to unfold. And my final question for you this afternoon, for folks who may not know, how unusual is it for a sitting U.S. senator to pass away while in office, and how does Congress typically respond?
So deaths in the Congress do not happen very often, but they are regular enough because, again, many politicians are quite old. So what generally happens is they will honor Lindsey Graham. Some senators have the privilege of actually lying in state at the state capitol, at the national capitol in Washington, D.C. That's a rare privilege that has not happened to a senator since John McCain passed. Is Lindsey Graham the level of John McCain's respect to be able to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol? Perhaps that will be a decision made by the leaders of Congress, but they might honor him in that way. But after that, he will be replaced by another senator who will just do their best to pick up his legacy and continue to represent South Carolina in the United States Congress.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chase Meyer with the University of South Carolina. We appreciate you and giving us insight on not only the weight and that he carried as a senator and a political figure, but also what the process could look like over the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.